There comes a moment in every life where we face a crossroads, not just in circumstances but in spirit, a place where all our logic runs dry, all our strength runs out, and the only step left is to trust God fully, blindly, and boldly, even when it feels like the ground is missing beneath our feet. And in that exact moment when fear says stop, but faith says move, God shows up in ways we never imagined. Because trusting Him fully is not about having a perfect plan. It's about knowing He holds the plan, and He is the plan, and He never fails. Think about Abraham, called by God to leave everything familiar without a map, without a GPS, without a 5-step financial plan, just a promise. Go to a land I will show you. And because he trusted fully, we still call him the father of faith. Hebrews 11:8 says, "By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out, not knowing where he was going." And maybe that's where you are now, not knowing where, how, or when, but something inside you still whispers, "Trust me." And when you do, mountains move, doors open, favor follows, and peace floods your heart in ways the world can't explain. Trusting God fully isn't passive, it's power in surrender, strength in letting go. And it's the only thing that truly shifts the atmosphere, because when your faith says yes, heaven gets activated on your behalf. Let's talk about real people, real stories. There's a woman in Texas who lost her job and had no idea how she'd feed her children. And as she stood at her empty pantry, she prayed, "God, I don't know what to do, but I trust you." And the next morning, a stranger showed up at her door with 3 bags of groceries saying, "I felt God told me to bring this here." And right then she knew, trusting God fully works. Or the young man in Florida who struggled with addiction for years in and out of rehab, his family at the breaking point. And one night he fell to his knees and said, "God, if you're real, take over." And that prayer of surrender broke the chains that nothing else could. He's now free, married, helping others, and living proof that God doesn't need perfect, He needs surrendered. Proverbs 3:5-6 is clear. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him and He will direct your path." And that's not poetry, it's a promise. And God always keeps His promises. Trusting God doesn't mean you won't face storms. It means you won't face them alone, and that the one who calms the sea walks beside you, even when you feel like you're sinking. Peter learned this firsthand. He stepped out of the boat because he trusted Jesus, and while the waves were wild, the moment he locked eyes with the Savior, he walked on what should have drowned him. And that's what happens when trust overrides fear. The enemy wants you to believe that trusting God means losing control. But here's the truth. We were never meant to carry control. That was always His job. What you're battling right now may feel too big, too heavy, too uncertain, but God is not surprised. He is not panicking. He's positioning, preparing, and pouring out what you'll need when the time is right. And if you look back, even briefly, you'll see it. Moments where you didn't know how you made it, but somehow you did. Moments where a door opened just in time, or you met the right person at the right moment. That's not coincidence. That's providence. And it happens when you trust God fully, even when it's slow, even when it's silent, even when it feels like your prayers are going unanswered. God is still moving. Because Isaiah 40:31 says, "Those who trust in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles." Not crawl, not stumble. Soar. But here's the key. You can't halfway trust and expect full miracles. Trusting God fully is an all-in decision where you trade your fear for His faithfulness, your worry for His wisdom, and your timeline for His perfect one. There's a story from North Carolina. An elderly man whose business was failing, he cried out, "God, I give this company to you. And within 2 weeks, he got a contract he never applied for. A door that hadn't existed before opened wide. And he told everyone, it wasn't luck. It was the Lord. Because God doesn't need your connections, just your commitment. Maybe today your trust is being tested. Your finances are tight. Your health is shaky. Your future feels foggy. But know this. Romans 8:28 is still true. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. Even the messy, even the delayed, even the heartbreaking. God turns ashes into beauty and tears into testimony when you trust him with everything. Don't let your current view cause you to forget what God already brought you through. If he did it before, he will do it again. Because he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. The reason you're hearing this now is not by chance. It's God reminding you that your breakthrough isn't based on what you see, but on who you trust. Don't underestimate the power of full surrender. There is nothing more dangerous to the enemy than a believer who trusts God fully, who wakes up every morning saying, Lord, I don't know how, but I know you will. Because that kind of faith shakes things in the spiritual realm. It activates miracles, and it pleases the heart of God. Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. But when you choose trust over panic, worship over worry, prayer over pressure, you invite heaven to intervene. And that's when the shift happens, the healing begins, and the miracle unfolds. And when you truly trust God fully, you stop needing all the answers to feel peace, because you begin to understand that peace isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of Jesus right there with you, whispering, I'm not going to leave you now, and reminding you through every valley, every delay, every detour, that he is still writing your story, and it is not over yet. When you trust God fully, the chains that kept you bound begin to break. Not always instantly, but certainly. And what used to hold you hostage begins to lose its grip, because trust unlocks freedom, and freedom brings clarity, and clarity makes room for joy. Some of you are waiting for a sign, and this is it. This is the moment where heaven is nudging your heart saying, let it go and trust me, because you weren't created to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. That job was never yours, and you're exhausted because you've been trying to do God's work in your strength, when he's been asking for your surrender, not your strategy. Remember the widow in 1 Kings 17? She had just enough oil and flour for one last meal and then planned to die. But the prophet Elijah said, make me a small cake first. And though it made no sense, she obeyed. And the oil never ran out, the jar was never empty, and her household was sustained through the drought. Trusting God fully often won't look practical, but it will always lead to the miraculous, because God honors bold faith and simple obedience. And maybe your jar feels empty today, your faith low, your finances tight, your hope fragile. But God sees your little, and when you trust him with it, he multiplies it beyond measure. Luke 6:38 says, give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together and running over. And that's not just about money. It's about trust, about believing that what you put in God's hands will always come back in better form, in greater measure, in unexpected timing. And here's what many don't tell you. Trusting God doesn't mean you'll never face hardship, but it does mean you'll never walk through it alone. Even Jesus, facing the cross, cried out in the garden, not my will, but yours be done. And that surrender led to the resurrection, the greatest victory the world has ever seen. And your trust, even in your darkest hour, even through your tears, even when the answer is still pending, is creating resurrection moments behind the scenes. I see you, The single mom trusting God to raise her kids in grace, the elderly man praying for healing, the young adult unsure of their next step, the business owner trying to survive this economy. And I say to you, God sees, God knows, and God rewards those who trust Him fully. Psalm 9:10 promises, "Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you," and He never will. If you've been afraid to step out, if you've been clinging to what's familiar out of fear of what's next, this is your reminder that what God has for you is better than what you're afraid to let go of. Trusting God fully means you stop asking, "What if it doesn't work?" and start declaring, "Even if it doesn't look like I planned, God is still good, and His plan is still perfect." And when that becomes your posture, heaven moves. Opportunities chase you down, peace guards your mind, and strength fills your soul, not because everything's easy, but because you finally understand that you're never alone. God is looking for people who will trust Him, not just when it makes sense, but especially when it doesn't, because that kind of faith moves mountains, restores marriages, heals sickness, breaks addiction, releases provision, and brings life where there was only death. There's a man in California who trusted God with a broken heart after losing everything: his home, his job, his family. And instead of giving up, he opened his Bible, started praying daily, started speaking life over his situation, and within a year, God restored what he lost, and more. He now runs a nonprofit, helps others who are struggling, and always says, "It started when I trusted God fully, when I finally stopped trying to fix it myself." And maybe that's where you are now, trying to hold the pieces together, while God is saying, "Give me the pieces and I'll make a masterpiece," because Romans 15:13 says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in Him." Not as you control, not as you worry, but as you trust. And trust grows when you stop focusing on the how and start resting in the who. Because the God who raised the dead, parted the sea, fed 5,000 with 2 fish, and shut the mouths of lions, is the same God working on your behalf right now. Child, you may not feel strong, but trusting God doesn't require strength. It requires surrender, and that surrender will usher in supernatural peace that money can't buy, that titles can't earn, and that the world can't take away. You're not here by mistake. You're not forgotten, and your story is far from over. He is working in your waiting, building something beautiful in your silence, and holding you together even when you feel like falling apart. Let this be the moment where your trust becomes complete, where you stop carrying what you were meant to release and start walking in faith that says, "God, if you brought me this far, I know you won't leave me now." The greatest freedom you will ever know is not when the storm ends, but when you realize you can sleep through it, because Jesus is in the boat with you. And Mark 4:39 reminds us, He still calms storms with just a word. So today, speak to your fear, speak to your doubt, and declare, "I trust you, Lord, with my life, my future, my family, my finances, and my every step forward." And watch what He does with that kind of faith. Don't keep this to yourself. Share this message with someone who needs to hear my voice today. Like this video, subscribe for more messages from me, and let's spread this love to the world. And if this message found you right where you needed it, subscribe to God's sacred voice and join a family of faith where stories are reborn, lives are restored, and hearts are healed. Because when we trust God fully, we don't just survive. We rise, we thrive, and we walk boldly into the promises He has already spoken over us.